And Chew.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and get it pulled up here.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? So we put up the message, see if you guys will join us here. And I'm going to pull all this stuff up and we'll get started and talk about whether or not jiu-jitsu is mental or physical. And I'll talk about where this thing came from and, why I'm bringing this up. Let's see here.
What's up?
What up?
Somebody said, "Hey, Daddy." People are silly.
Give me just a second, guys.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the podcast. We'll get rolling in just a minute.
I literally just changed all my passwords because there was a website that tells you whether or not like your stuff has been compromised.
What?
Yeah, and one of my things got compromised, so I had to change my Gmail accounts and all the passwords and
That's
stuff.
fucking crazy.
Yeah, it sucks. It's like,
People
man,
are nuts.
what a world we live in where all that stuff's so important.
I know, right?
It's like, 20, 30 years ago, it was like nothing.
Oh man, we already have a winner for the best comment.
Uh-oh.
Mark Gasson. He says half of BJJ is 90% mental. That's pretty good.
All right, Ron Burgundy.
That's pretty good.
Works
I like
60% of the time, every time.
it. Yep.
All right, so let me bring this up and turn that volume down. All right,
That's pretty awesome.
Damn, you guys are already here.
Welcome.
I just opened up and I was like, damn, there's so many comments already.
Yeah, people are rolling. We'll get to the comments later.
So here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to jump in. I'm going to talk about something that happened recently and kind of just a situation. And I want you guys to sort of think about it. And then at the end, we're going to do a little Q&A. And again, thank you guys for joining us on this this beautiful day. I know it's pretty chilly around the country. I know right now, this morning I got up on my Instagram. And I take cold showers. And it's funny because my cold shower gets so cold right now that I can see my breath.
Oh, shit.
And I'll take, I clean off with hot. I'll do cold for about 5 minutes, and then I'll do hot again and then cold to end. And I posted a thing. I was like, oh, cold shower when it's 3 degrees outside. And then like people are sending me messages like, yeah, it's like negative 47 with the wind chill where I'm at. So it's colder in some parts.
Where are they at?
They're in like Chicago and up north. It's apparently
blessed.
like a fun fact right now is that in some parts of the north, it's like colder than it is in Antarctica or something.
Oh my God.
So let's jump into it. So is jiu-jitsu mental or physical? That's kind of what we'll talk about today. Here's where this happened. So the other day I was talking with one of my students who he competed while I was in Costa Rica. And so he competed while I was in Costa Rica. And when I got back, we were talking about the competition. And I was asking him, I was like, how'd everything go? And, he was talking about a situation where he got caught in an armbar and he made it out of it, but his arm got tweaked a little bit. And then he ended up winning that match. And then in the next match, he was going against someone, and he felt that the singe of that arm where it had been injured a little bit. It's a little funky. It's healing up, but it's a little funky now. But he said he felt that pinch, and he realized he didn't really have a lot of strength in the arm. And so he said it instantly just zapped him mentally, right? Mm-hmm. So during that class, I was talking to people. I was like, whenever we're training, you have these moments where, everyone's different, right? Some people, maybe they are really good top players and they whenever they get put on their back, they mentally give up. Mm-hmm. Some people, when you get them into side control, they just give up. Different people give up, or they have that little voice that pops up inside of their head sometimes, and says, hey, just quit. But one of my other students during this conversation was like, yeah, jiu-jitsu is like 70% mental, right? Like, isn't that what they say? And then, I thought about it. Like, there's all these times where you hear people say, oh, it's 90% mental. It's, 10% physical and all this stuff. But, and I just thought about this. We make this distinction, especially in Western culture, right, of the brain, the mind, and then the body being separate, right? Like they're somehow separate. But when you look at them, and I sent this out in an email. If you guys are on the email list, you saw the image that I sent. I was like, I sent a picture of the brain with the spinal, the stem, the brain stem, the spinal cord coming down, and then the peripheral nervous system spanning out. And when you look at it, it looks like a plant, mm-hmm. or like a vegetable or a flower with a deep root system. And then when you think about the fact that, let's say that your brain is injured. Let's say that someone, like, you get hit really hard in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. You might lose some part, like, of your movement. You might not be able to move a part of your body, right? Right. So that thinking thing is connected to your moving things, right? And then even then, like, there's a book called I want to say it's called Presence. It's by Amy Cuddy. She did a TED Talk that you can watch, but the book's really interesting. But she was going into these studies where they basically would put people in certain postures, right? And in these postures, they found that when people would slump over, right, that if they kept them in that posture for several minutes, their body would begin to produce hormones associated with depression and like negative thoughts. And then if the person was to stand, right, with their hands up in the air in a V, their hands on their hips, like big chest, very big and vertical and horizontal, very big, right? Their body would then, within a few minutes, begin to produce more testosterone and more positive hormones, and even their overall mood and the way they felt, right, was better. And so you see that, oh, well, this moving thing sometimes can affect the way this thinking thing goes. And there was even, I talked about this book before called Spark, where they were talking about how just movement and exercise, how it can completely change the way our cognitive function and all these other thinking functions that we have, right? So you understand that they're not separated, and they're not separate in the body. They're only separate in our words, our symbols of things, right? Our words are just symbols. They're separated by that. That's it. They're separated with the way that we look at them, but they're not separate. And if you would say, oh, well, maybe you disagree. Well, if you're like, for instance, we a lot of times have this idea that like there's this little guy up in our brain like driving us, right? Like we're in control and we're like it's like a car, right? And we're like this little guy in our head driving this big flesh suit that's got bones and nerves and stuff, right? But if you were in such good control of your body, why is it that people eat foods that they know they shouldn't eat, right? Why is it that people say things they know they shouldn't say? Why is it that people sometimes have sex with people they shouldn't have sex with, right? Like, I mean, like you do things that you know you should not do, but you do them anyway because you're not in complete control all the time, right? You have this little thinking thing that does have a role to play. But all this other stuff has a role to play, right? Your subconscious, your autonomic nervous system, all these things play into it. And so I think that it's interesting to think about that, like sometimes you don't want to separate them. And another thing that I think about when we were having this conversation, like, is it mental? Everybody has been told that you have to have this mindset that when you walk in there, you got to know that you're winning, right? I can tell you on so many occasions in my life, not just on the mat, right? Off the mat, like in all sorts of situations, whether it be girls, whether it be business dealings, things like that. There were so many times where I was like, nah, this isn't happening. I'm going to do it anyway because, I have this calling to do it, but I don't think it's going to work for me. In particular with jiu-jitsu, with competitions, I've been out in competitions where I've been against guys who I was like, oh man, this guy's about to crush me. Like this guy's really, really good. I'm going to lose. But you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go. And then guess what happened? The body took over. This little machine that I had programmed took over, because that's the neat thing. Because when you're going full speed in a competition, there are times where that mental side of it will come to play, right? But in a lot of times, you're not thinking. You're going so fast, you don't have time to think. You're going, you're acting, you're being. And the thing about it is that the way that we train, the way that we drill, the way that we do things day to day, it programs us. It programs the machine to do what it's going to do. So when you can't think, you go, you do things. So there's been several times where like I've been against guys. This goes back as far as like a white belt. I remember there's a white belt. I went against a purple belt once. I thought I was going to get smashed. I beat that guy. And even up to now, there's times where I go against these young black belts. Sometimes I'm like, man, the old man's about to get his beaten today, right? And then I'll end up beating the younger black belt or something, right? So it's like I still surprise myself as to what I'm capable of, because what happens is a lot of times we think, our ego, right, is a construction, the thoughts, and sometimes it's just too small. It's not accurate as to who you are, right? Because who you are is so much more than what you think you are. And I think that's one of the things. It's like there is a mindset approach to it. There's a mental side to it, 100%. The thoughts, the way that you think plays a huge role into what's going to happen on the mat. I'm not saying that that's not true. That is true, 100%. But at the same time, your physical being, this thing that you look at separate from this thing plays a big role into it. Because if this thing is not, you could have the best mindset ever. You could think you're going to win, but if you didn't put in the legwork, you didn't train your ass off, you're not winning a tournament. It's just not going to happen. Sorry for your luck, right? You're going to get smashed because the physical had not been dealt with. You can have the best mindset you want to. It's not going to happen, right? But then at the same time, you can have a situation where you have this physical monster who can have a really poor mindset, and then they underperform, right? Because they don't have the courage and the fierceness to face what's possible. And so it's together. They're one and the same. They're not separate. And so the idea that I made in the email was that they're not separate. This idea of physical and mental being such a separate thing, they're just not separate. They're one and the same. And so when you say, is it 70% mental, 30%, it's all together, right? It's you. It's 100% you, right? Like your thought process, it's just a part of who you are. So think of it like your mindset. Well, that's just a part of your skill set, right? And I think that one of the things that you can do by putting yourself in challenging situations like jiu-jitsu tournaments or even hard roles with people is that you learn that you just put trust in yourself. You have to put faith in yourself. And sometimes you find out that there's way more in you than you thought there was. I know this to be true for myself. I know this to be true for so many people that I've been around where, you know, part of what competitions do is it helps people realize who they are at a deep level, sometimes good, sometimes bad. So when we say mental or physical, I think they're just one and the same. And really what we're talking about is just another facet to you. Just like my sweeps are really good, well, my mindset's really good, or my mindset needs some work, right? I give up too much in these positions, but it all works together.
Yeah.
So that was the idea, yeah.
Yeah, so it gets me to thinking like what I think the percentage, if you have to put a percentage, I don't think you can, but I think the percentage is different for different people.
And it depends
like,
on the situations.
Yeah. You know, you brought up a good point. Like some people can be physically be monsters, and they can be physically like imposing if they're imposing on the other person. Like when we talked about, when that Joe Rogan podcast with Teddy Atlas, and he talks about Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson, yeah.
And he says, well, Mike walked in the room or whatever, and he knew he was like just the most physically
demanding person, yeah.
Like just physically dominant person in the room. He was mentally like a monster.
Right.
And then if there's somebody else that kind of challenged him, he would, I guess, in his opinion, would cower or would not be his best self.
Sure.
That guy, I mean, has all the physical tools. I think they need a larger percentage of, you know, mental kind of stuff because they're so used to being a certain way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a guy one time training with us, my buddy Jason Keaton. He said, "Man, I've got this guy," and Nick Graff. I think he follows me on Instagram. I don't know if he listens to the podcast, but he's like into powerlifting now. Huge dude, so strong. So Nick came in, and Nick was this guy where he looked like he was a heavyweight, but he weighed about $195.
Okay,
dude, he's a specimen, bro. Like he's athletic. He was the fastest dude in the gym. He would outrun everyone for sprints. He would fold heavy bags in half with kicks and punches. He was a freak of nature, but he would give up as soon as he got a little tired. As soon as he got challenged, then he would give up, right? Like, and he would fold. And I remember we took him to an MMA fight. And I remember everybody saw him walking, like lurking around in this MMA fight, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, look at this guy! He's a freak! Like, what is it? Which is it? Who's this new heavyweight you guys have?" I was like, "He's an 85-pounder." Oh. They're like, 185, like, you know, and I'm 230 at the time. He's like, "He's bigger than you." I was like, "I know." And I remember when I was getting him ready for his match, he's sitting there and he's looking at his opponent, who's like, you know, who's thick, but he's not huge or anything like that. And Nick's looking at him, he's like, "Man, he looks big." I said, "Nick, you're." I was cussing at him. I was like, "Dude, you're huge. Get out there, do the thing." Nick fights this guy. And it was interesting because Nick was going to this match scared, afraid, right? Because he literally just did not have the true confidence in himself mindset-wise to whatever. And he went out there and he punched the guy, took him down, and proceeded. The actual referee got in trouble for this, but he punched him. We counted 122 times to the face. So he got into back mount, laid the guy flat on his belly, and he would go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. He literally would punch him in threes, and he eventually ended up punching him 122 times in the side of the head. The guy's ears were purple and big.
Oh my God!
And it was one of those situations where it's like he just went out there and did it, you know. And again, this is one of those cases where he's a physical specimen, so his body took over even when his mind was a little bit off. But there is a situation where part of what we were doing in his camp for that fight was not so much the physical, because his physical was fine. It was we would put him in really bad situations to help bring up that little guy, the little guy that goes, "Hey man, I want to quit. Hey man, I want to stop." And so we could bring that guy to the surface and then address him, right? because a lot of times that's what we have to do with ourselves, because we have these emotions, these sensations, and you got to find them as they come up and be ready to like, oh, hey, it's that side of me that pops up whenever I'm in guard and someone puts pressure on me. I need to address this thing. And you need to see the sensation, but you don't have to honor it. You can send it on its way. You know what I mean? Like I had to do this when I was a white belt. My coach was like, you need to, fight from guard. But when I would fight from guard, every time like it got to that point where someone's passing and I'm framing up and pushing away, I would give up. There would be a little voice that would pop up and go, hey, just let them get to side control. My arms are tired. Just stop doing this, right? And then I had to wait. And then you got to get ready for it. So I was like, okay, I'm being a bitch. I'm giving up. So then when that little voice would pop up and say, hey man, just give up. I'm like, no, I'm going. Like, get out of here. I got to fight this position. I can't just let him pass my guard.
Right.
And so just like we're training the physical, when you get that burn in your muscle and you keep pushing through it, right? When you get those thoughts, it's just like the same thing. It's all connected, right? Your body's like saying, ooh, this is tough, stop. When you start getting those thoughts in your head that you want to quit, do things. No, push through, right? That's part of what jiu-jitsu is. It's part of like helping you do these things. You can do this a number of different ways with different modalities, but jiu-jitsu is one of the ways that you can do that. So
yeah, I mean, you find like the best way to maybe train that is to get yourself as close or into that situation and just try to constantly get somebody to fight, just to work through like that little voice, like say that doubt or that
put yourself where you don't want to be, right? Because the idea is that I've said this before. Jiu-jitsu to me is part of it's being comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? When you come into the gym, you're doing it's a weird situation. You have to be comfortable with some 300-pound person putting their friggin' belly right on your face and putting pressure, and your ribs can barely expand fully and you can barely breathe, and everything in your body says, man, this is so uncomfortable. I can tap and this will all be over. Yeah. You have to fight that urge and say, no, fuck it, I'm going to keep going, right? And I've had those situations in tournaments before where like literally I'm thinking to myself, God, I could just like lay here and just give up, and then I'm like, no, go, right? That's always going to pop up. And that's the beautiful part about it is that you can that's a skill, man. Like that, just like you have a beautiful armbar, that's a skill, being able to address your thoughts as they pop up and choose to do what you will with them, right? So like when you are getting ready to do something outside off the mat, right? When you have a negative emotion that is not going to serve you well, you can choose to send it on its way, because you've done it so many times on the mat that every time it pops up, you're like, no, I'm not honoring that. Be gone. I got stuff to do, right? So it's the same thing. When you have those moments of resistance or, like struggle or challenge, you can say, you know what, I'm not going to honor you. Go on your way. But again, I think it's all sort of connected rather than separate.
Yeah, because, let me ask you this. What's one thing you listen for if you get somebody in side control? What do you listen for?
You mean like my opponent?
Yeah.
I listen for their breathing.
Yeah.
So the breathing, when the breathing gets really out of whack, I almost know. And typically there's one breath that I instantly know that I'm off to the races, and I'll hear this. The sigh. Like every time I hear the sigh, it's like, and you get that sigh when you just had a really good scramble. And I know that a lot of times there's a great match I had when I was in the Miami Open in 2011. It was my first big black belt tournament. And I remember being there my first match. The guy swept me and got to mount first crack. He drew first blood. He was up 6 points. I managed to get out of that sweep him. I got to mount, and then after that, like we're going battling. And I remember that when I was passing to the first time to mount, I felt him go, I heard him go, and I felt his body limp, go soft. And then afterwards, it was like, I remember I got to mount, and then I took his back and went back to mount, took his back. I was just racking up points. Ended up being like, I think it was like 16 or 18 to that 6, and I ended up choking with bow and arrow. But the moment I felt him go, I was like, oh no, that's it. That's my opportunity. And I poured it on.
Yeah, but think about the variation. Like your energy level, your mindset went up.
Oh yeah.
And his, you could tell, like it pumps you up. Like
sure.
When you hear that, you're like, oh, it's fucking over.
I just broke them.
Because usually there's no coming back from that.
No.
You feel like tension. If somebody's getting your side control, like tension, and then you feel them accept it.
You feel them accept it. And that's the difference, right? Like you can feel when someone accepts your position or when you took it, right? Like when you take it, it's a hard battle. And even though you get on top of them, you don't feel comfortable because they're down there thinking.
Right.
They're like, I'm going to get out of this guy's guard or this guy's side control. But then when you feel that just complete collapse, it's like a wall just crumbled down, right? Like, and then when you get there, it's like everything's soft and loose. And you're like, they've given up. Like their body, or they have nothing left in them, one or the other, right? So you take what you got. So
that's what I tell white belts all the time. If I am helping out or I'm in that beginner class, I'll tell them, like, if you do anything, Focus on your breathing. Make your breathing consistent. Like don't, groan and then stop. And because I can tell like you're efforting, and then you're stopping your effort. So be consistent. And you also hear it with people panicking. Somebody panics, their breathing changes a certain way, whether, they start breathing faster or whatever it is, but you can tell by that breath.
Well, that was what we like at the end of class last night. That's what I shared with you when we were doing that after class. We did some breathing exercises. We did a little bit of stretching, and then we did some breathing. And with the breathing, I was telling guys, like, because basically if you breathe in a very, that's a very shallow breath. That's very, it's associated with like, fight or flight, right? Your sympathetic nervous system's kicked on. This is the breath that we'll use when we're in the middle of a hard scramble. We're just trying to get the air, right? But when we're done, like, when you don't need to breathe like that, we can breathe a lot more slowly and rhythmically. And then especially after training, you want to try to bring your breathing into a better place. And so, for instance, last night when we were training, we after the stretches, I was telling everybody, like, we did 10 minutes, which was very short, but again, kind of introducing people to it. 10 minutes of simply lying down, focusing on our breath. You can call it meditation if you wanted to, but you can just call it breath work, right? And we laid there and did some breathing, and the focus of the breathing was a longer exhale with a slower inhale. So breathing in for maybe 2 to 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 to 8 seconds, and then a pause. And that longer exhale and that slower inhale and exhale, that's going to basically bring down the sympathetic, raise the parasympathetic. And so the idea is that if you raise the parasympathetic, that your body's more able to recover and be in a better state for recovery and relaxation, opposed to, and they show this, like when you're freaking breathing like this, which is very common for people. Any of you guys listening to this, you can even, if you're driving your car, if you're sitting at a desk, bring attention to where your breath's coming from. Is it coming from down in your belly? More than likely, it's not. A lot of you guys probably, I had several of the guys last night where they couldn't actually breathe in their stomach.
Right.
It was so turned off. And so I had to like have them do some stuff on the wall where they could actually get that belly to raise. And then like, then, oh, okay. And you can just bring your awareness to where the breath's coming from. And if you focus on it, you need to be bringing most of the time, right? When you have to do the chest breathing because you're in the middle of a hard session, whatever. But when you can, bring that breath to the gut.
Yep.
And then breathe out, and it'll slow you down.
And it's efficiency. Like you're breathing more efficiently. You're getting better oxygenation.
Right.
And you're also using the proper muscles. You're using your diaphragm versus your upper traps, your chest and shoulder muscles and stuff. Which, somebody that has COPD or like a breathing disorder, or somebody that's a smoker that, can't breathe anymore, they use a lot of those accessory muscles to breathe, and they're inefficient.
Yeah.
And so like if you're have great cardio, but you don't breathe well, you're not able to get those muscles need that oxygen to to continue to work
absolutely
at a good rate. So
and absolutely, I didn't appreciate that, like the diaphragm, like you need to like use that thing. What I mean is a lot of people don't. Right. A lot of people don't breathe with the diaphragm.
Dude, it's so crazy. Like it's like foreign. It's like what? Well, I'm not breathing right. I'm breathing.
When you tell someone, exactly. When you tell someone, hey, you could breathe in a better way, or hey, let's do some breath work. They're like, breathing. I've been breathing my whole life. I think I'm okay. And then you're like, okay, man, like just try this, you know what I mean? And give it a whirl.
Yep.
And see what you notice. And I think that even like me, as I've gotten deeper and deeper into the idea of like focusing on the breath, it does help. Like there's times where I'm on the bottom or I'm in bad spots, even in tournaments, and I bring that breath in and it kind of like just relaxes a little bit. And honestly, it doesn't seem that strange to me now, because I know that like one of my common cues from my coach back in the day was breathe, because I would typically, as a white belt, I'd hold my breath. And I remember it's like, I would hold my breath and squeeze tight. And when I was in that state, it was like tunnel vision. And as soon as I would take a deep breath, right? I would take a big deep breath and I would, that was what we used to do back in the day. It was like all of a sudden I was like, I can see the opportunities in front of me.
Yeah, instead of being take the moment in a little bit.
Slow things down a little bit.
Yeah, kind of reset the batter. Just reset the situation.
Yeah,
it's a good way to just kind of mentally and maybe even physically reset yourself and like, all right, I'm down on points or whatever it is. Let's see what I can do. And obviously, it helps you focus a little better. You can listen better to your coach. If you're just not like in your head, like tunnel vision, squeezing and holding your breath. If you take a breath, you can kind of, like I said, take the situation and breathe. And
if you guys are listening to this and you're like kind of like wondering about maybe some breathing exercises you could try, a really simple one to begin with is called, it has a few other names, but the one commonly used is called box breathing. And typically you're going to do that on a 4-4-4 count. So basically 4-second inhale and exhales, and you'll have a 4-second pause. And you can look that up, and it's a really simple way to breathe. And again, just trains you to breathe. I've also done a video on like 90-90 breathing, which is a really simple exercise that you can do, off of a wall to learn how to like breathe into your diaphragm. Super helpful. So yeah, so breathing's super important. So
Yeah, and the one thing that we had talked about yesterday too is when you breathe out, kind of purse your lips. So like
yeah,
pretend like you're blowing out candles or something like that. So don't just like have your mouth wide open and just
yeah,
So when you do that, actually, scientifically, you're creating a pressure in your lungs, and you're allowing the bronchioles to expand. So you're allowing your lungs to better expand, so you can get better oxygenation. So it's just you're going to be more efficient. So like breathing out like you're blowing out candles. So breathing in your nose, and I guess some people say breathing in your mouth is breathing through your mouth, I guess. But
I think it depends on the different things. I find that I can breathe more easily into my lower stomach with my nose than with my stomach. But I like to exhale with the mouth,
Yep.
with the lips closed, and you can even just feel that you can brace when you breathe out with like blowing up a balloon, blowing candles out,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was cool. It's something different. I'm sure somebody walks in the gym and they see us doing that and they've never been to jiu-jitsu. And they're like, what the hell?
Yeah, man. But and the thing is, for me, it's just I'm just coming from a place of sharing,
Right.
Because I'm like, man, I like literally like the other night, Jess and I we're Sunday we meal prepped and everything else, and then I did an hour. It was about an hour and a half meditation, like an hour and a half sit. Which seems, I mean, like I'm dead still. I'm not moving. I'm not asleep though. Like I'm not snoring or asleep. I'm there. But I remember she was like, when I got in bed, she's like, God, I was wondering if you were ever like going to be done. But when you get used to doing it, like I'm dead still, you get used to doing it. I find it so beneficial for the way that I think, the way that I feel, just everything, right? And I get some of them. I get done with it sometimes, having some pretty profound things pop up along the way. But you always bring it back to the breath, right? And I found it useful. So I'm just like, well, guys, like I've been doing all these techniques. I've been on all these retreats, whatever. I'm like, I'm just sharing a little bit of it. You take it if you want it, but by no means feel pressure. Because last night I didn't make anybody stay. If they wanted to stay and do it, they could do it. And I just find it beneficial. Like I do it all the time when people leave the gym. I do it by myself. But I'm like, if you guys want to do it, you can do it with me. So
It's a part of recovery. It's another aspect of recovery. I mean, we think a lot of times about recovery as physical. It's not always physical. It's mental and it's
neurological.
Yeah, neurological.
Oh my God.
It's your mindset.
I
Setting
mean,
the mindset as well.
you could have all the food coming in and like eating all the best nutrients, blah 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 blah, all that stuff. But the thing is like if you don't find some way to deal with the stress in your body, and stress is not all physical, right? We have doses of stress to the physical, but a lot of our stress, if we think about it, right, where does it come from? It comes from work, our families, life, all these things. And if you don't find some way to cope with all that stress that's coming in, which learning how to, again, and what we're talking about stress, when your stress response is kicked up, what are you doing? You're sympathetic. When you're not stressed out, we're getting into that parasympathetic. So what we're trying to do with the breathing is basically, let's go parasympathetic. Let's work on our recovery. And just as much of it is our physical, the supplements we take. Everybody freaks out about supplements, right? But then they don't have time to sit there and just breathe for a minute. Like it's like you screw around on your phone. Just sit down and do nothing for a minute. And it seems such a foreign thing. Like I was talking to one of the guys last night who did it, one of the white belts, and he was like, man, he goes, I used to meditate. But he's like, I hadn't done it in a while. And he's like, man, last night, like, I felt so good doing it. He's like, I reminded myself I need to do this. And it's funny because I was like, isn't it such a strange thing that you have to sit there and like convince yourself to just sit and do nothing? Like, just do nothing for a minute, right? Like, but let your body relax. But if you can get yourself into a better state where you're not so stressed out, where you find some way to sort of empty out that stress cup, right? Then that allows you then to be, in just a better state all the time, better recovery, better everything, but if your stress response is kicked up by the way that you breathe, by the way that you eat, by the way that you train, by everything around you, then your body's never ever getting a chance to recover,
Well, we're always getting stimulation, some type of stimulation. So we're kind of taking out some of this stimulus. We're taking out sound or vision or whatever. We're just we're closing your eyes and focusing on your breath. So you're taking out a lot of these stimulus. You're allowing your brain to kind of almost, I don't know if it's relax or what, just focus on one thing, and you're not constantly getting this news feed or this whatever. You're just able, you're kind of able to disconnect. And I think there's value to that. There's value to like being able to focus on breathing and, like you said, letting some thoughts in or letting them pass through, and just being able to, I think it helps you. For me, it's helped me get over like the peaks and valleys of like anxiety and emotion. Like you're able to better handle some of those, some of those states of high anxiety, because you're like, oh shit, I've done this before. I've done this breathing. So I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to breathe. And then you're able to kind of control some of that stress.
Right. Well, think about it like this right now. Like we have this cup in front of me, right? So if I was to take this tea, right, and I'm going to pour a little bit anyway. If I pour this tea now, so if we say that the tea is the stress response, right, or is the stress in our body, and the cup is us. If we keep filling up and we never have a way to discharge some of it, it's going to start overflowing. And that's where you have like panic attacks and you get freaked out, and you physically cannot deal with any little thing. You start erupting on people you love, and you could just, you're just all over the place. But if we can find a way to dump some of it out through, whatever means is possible, then you a lot of times feel a lot better, right? Obviously, this is one of the things that jiu-jitsu can help with. It can help reduce the stress in our body because it makes us feel really good through the exercise. But even if you listen to people like when they go on a hike, they'll say, man, I went out in the woods and my phone was turned off and I didn't have to think about it. And they're like, I feel so recharged, right? Or that, man, I was going to sleep in a reasonable hour. Well, it's because you're not screwing around on your damn phone all the time. Like, it's like I talked about this before. I turn my phone off in airplane mode and I throw it to the side, and at night I don't want anything to do with it, right? I'm like, I'm going to read, I'm going to relax, whatever, for the next 2 hours before I go to bed. But even meditation, just like you said, it can get rid of all the stimulus that we were having and let it to me, I find it as a way where I can just take some of the stress that's in the cup, pour some of it out. So this way, when I have to take on stress later on, from whether it be physical or mental, I have more room to deal with it, opposed to being like at my wit's end, and then any little thing that comes in there is like, blah, I'm just done, right? So I think it's helpful for that. So, and again, people can look up and do their own research, of course, but do your research on like what happens when you get into a chronically stressed state. Everything from cancers to everything else can help be formed because you're in a state of stress and inflammation. It's no good. So,
I think it's hard for people to just sit back and do that. It's hard for me sometimes because you're always thinking about shit you got to get done.
And you got to let it go.
And it's like, I got to stop for a minute.
It's going to be there.
Yeah.
You got to be disciplined, right? You got to be disciplined. And then you got to say, this is time for me. It's not time for work. It's not time for anything else. It's time for me right now. Just doing this thing, doing one thing, nothing else, right? But we look at that as such a bad thing because we're in like this world of like productivity, hustle and grind. Well, absolutely, and I'm all for it. Yeah. I've worked my ass off, but at the same time, have had to understand how valuable it is to just say, look, I need time for me, because if I'm not taking care of this thing that I've got going on, I can't do anything else, right? So
you can't function at high level, regardless.
Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, I had that term I was telling you about, and this is pretty stressed out. It was my first tournament in a year. Yeah. I didn't do great, but like the first match, I was kind of just nervous and kind of antsy, and I ended up losing. But I was able to have one more match. It was like 2 hours later. I did a lot of deep breathing, like visualization, and I felt so much more relaxed, in the zone, more focused.
Absolutely.
I felt more like I was like, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play, and whatever happens, happens. But I felt better, even though performance wasn't the best. I felt better. So I felt like I was able to play my game better than just be nervous and kind of like...
Right, and rigid. Yeah, well, we were talking about this before the podcast. That's when you start to get into need versus desire. And the going back to like what we were talking about mindset earlier, like I think one of the big mindset shifts that people have to sort of... I know it's something that's helped me, is identifying what's a real need and what's a desire.
Okay, give us an example.
Okay, so when I was younger, right, in my young days, when I was a spazzy, young, insecure guy, right, I felt the need to win all the time. So when I would compete, I needed to win, and if I didn't win, my ego was wrecked, bro. Like I would be so like destroyed by it for like hours. I wouldn't talk to anybody. If I went to the gym just for a regular training session, I had to win. I needed to win. So when I would go in there, I couldn't play around with new techniques. I couldn't try new things. I had to win. That's what I was there to do.
Yeah.
And it really negatively affected a lot of the training early on. I think I could have been far better if I would have focused on having a desire, right? So having a desire to win, I still desire to win, right? When I go to competitions, I have a burning desire to win. But I don't need to win, right? Like I know I'm not going to win every one, but I got a burning desire, so I'm going to go for it. And understanding the difference between the two allows me to say, it allows me to discern the situation better, where I can look at the situation and go, I'm getting all in a hubbub about this thing, but really, like, for instance, with tournaments, one of the big like sort of wake up calls to me is nobody gives a shit. Right? Nobody cares. Like if I lose this tournament, it's not like it really changes much, right? It's my own journey that I'm going through, my own path. If I lose, I have to deal with it. But like my family's still going to love me. My girlfriend's still going to be there for me. And even I've lost matches, and it's not like people say, "Oh, Chewy, I'm not following that guy anymore because he lost a tournament match," right? No one gives a shit. So when you realize that, it's like you don't really need to win. Now, if you really want to win, then go for it, 100%. But the neediness is a problem, because if you feel like you need to have it, like if you feel like you need to win, it gets in the way of taking chances and really going for it. But if you just got that burning desire that's fueling you, right? Instead of fear of losing because you need this thing, you got this passion that's driven by, I want this. Those are two different emotions to me, right? And that's the way that I look at it. I mean, obviously people could like maybe break that apart, but that's the way that I look at it, need versus desire, right?
I think one's based on fear and one's based on kind of motivation, but definitely the need to win sometimes sounds like in your situation was based on fear. If I lose, then it's going to hurt my ego. What are people going to think? I'm afraid of, I go back to the gym. Am I still the guy that I was, or whatever?
You don't even know. Your ego just doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. You get that construction in your head. You're like, I don't want to deal with this thing, and you don't even realize it. But then again, back then I wasn't as good at being able to like sort of see myself and see what's going on in the old noggin there, and I'm like being taken away by my emotions and my insecurities. Right, because I was just like being led by them. So it affected my performances early on, and for a long time, it took me a long time to get out of my own head. So when I would compete, I would just let loose and go.
So what changed? What do you think you did different to get to this point?
What do you mean?
Like what changed your mindset? What changed from this need to win to a just desire to win, and not having it affect your ego? How did you deal with that transition?
Well, of course it affects your ego no matter what, right? I mean, to be a competitor, you have to have an ego.
Okay.
Right? Because again, if you you have to be a little bit full of yourself to think you're going to go out there and win.
Right.
Right? I see myself as having the ability to beat you. You have to be at least a little bit constructed. And I think that, we all have to build an ego to some degree. That a lot of times ego gets used negatively.
Okay.
Like if you have an ego, you're a bad person. Ego is just saying that this is kind of a construction of who I think I am, and I'm going to navigate with this through the world, right? Like, I mean, if you don't have something like that, if you have no ego, you have no like sense of who you are or who you think you are, right? That's really what it comes down to. But, understanding that, like, just thinking like, ask the question again.
I guess like how you accepted, like you said, you had an ego, a desire, a need to win.
Sure.
So how did you get to that point where you accepted that it was a desire for you to win, and that you losing a match was not going to define you or define your rank in the gym?
Painfully. So here's where it started for me. This is as a black belt.
Okay.
So I would have these glimpses of like brilliance, I guess you would say, right? Where I would get out of my own way. It happened whenever, it always happened whenever I didn't think I was going to win, where I didn't give a shit about the outcome. I was like, you know what? Like, for instance, when I was a white belt and going against a purple belt, I beat the guy because I didn't care. I was like, I'm going to lose, but let's go for it. And there were several of those matches that would pop up from time to time. And then I remembered, as a black belt, I had this tournament where it was an invite tournament, and we took 22 or so people up to Ohio, up in Columbus. It was a pretty good turnout, especially I'm only been a black belt for about a year at this point. We go up to this tournament, and it was after one of my MMA fights. I was in great shape, and I remember I rolled with this guy. I think it was an 8 or 7 minute match, and I remember I didn't do anything I normally did. I remember I was playing full guard. Like, you know me, I don't play full guard. It's not what I do. And, after the match, like, he beat me on an advantage, but it sucked because, like, towards the end, I had like a omoplata set up. I was like, fuck. I was like, I wish I would have done something, 7 minutes ago. And I remember walking off the mat, knowing that I was so scared to go for something because I had all the guys behind me, there for me. And I was like, man, I felt like such a bitch. I was like, I could have went for it, but I didn't go for it because I was too scared. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to start, like, I don't care anymore, because it's like, nobody cares. It wasn't like anybody came up to me and said, Chewy, I don't like you anymore. Chewy, I'm not going to train with you anymore. Nobody cared. So I was just like, you know what? Screw it. When I compete, I'm just going to go for it. And I remember it was about a year and a half later, 2013, summer 2013, we had this big turnout. It was even bigger this time. This time it was a local tournament. I remember we had like 60 or 80 people. You know, we had like 45 competitors that day or something crazy. And then we had like, you know, another 45 people or something like that there watching. And I remember everybody's cheering, and it's an invite tournament. It was me, Buddy, Brent, and then we had two other guys that had beaten me in 2012. They had beaten me. Two guys I'd lost to. I lost to them, and I had to go against them in front of all my students. Oh, man, dude, I was like terrified. And then, you know, I was like, F it, I'm just going to go, right? Like, it doesn't matter. They're going to still love, they're going to still care about me afterwards. They're still going to be there with me. Who cares? Let's just go for it. I beat them. I won the tournament, you know, but I won it because I just didn't care at that point. And so it's like, you know, you understand, like you have to go in there knowing you can do well and stuff like that. But at the same time, you know, you have to just get out of your way sometimes and let the vehicle go and just let it do what it's supposed to do. Because a lot of times now when I watch myself compete, I look at myself and I go, man, who is that guy? Whoa, dude, he's doing, and like sometimes I do stuff that I've never even done in the gym before. I just made it up on the fly. I'm like, oh man, look at that. That was kind of cool. Who is this guy? You know, I feel like it's like, you know, I walk up to the mat and then there's like me and this person change places. He looks like me, talks like me, you know, everything else is similar. As soon as he competes, he goes out there, and as soon as the match is over, I go in and take his place and I get my hand raised. But during the match, I'm like, I don't feel like I'm the same person because I'm out of my head and I'm letting this thing take over, this body take over and do what it was programmed to do. So
that moment, is that mental or physical?
It's all in the same. All in the same.
You ever, this might be a little off topic, but you ever get in your car and like driving from the gym to home and all of a sudden you're home and like you're like, how the fuck did I get, like you just zoned out? Like it's happened before. Like,
yeah.
It's automatic, right? And that's, I don't know if that's mental or physical, but like you're like driving, all of a sudden you're home and you're like, how the hell did
I've done it plenty of times.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like one of those, is that mental? Is that physical? Is that just mentally you've already done it so many times that your body's just physically taking over and autopilot?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're paying attention, you're there, but you're kind of went from point A to point B, not really knowing, not with a lot of mental effort.
Right.
Because you've done it so many times. And then you have the other things like somebody, you hear stories all the time. This guy was a killer at the gym, and you know, and then he goes to an MMA fight or a match, and they're totally just
they're done. Yeah,
terrible.
Yeah,
and then you have guys at the gym that are like,
I used to be like that. I used to be the guy that was a killer in the gym. I was good in tournaments, but I was so much better in the gym. But that's a skill. It's just like anything else. You have to develop that skill. To me, it's no different. It's like it's just a facet of who you are as a person. Your being. Taking yourself and being able to present yourself the same way in all the situations, and being mindful of when you're just basically you're full of shit in your head, and understanding just to send it on its way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have the other scenarios where somebody's at the gym, they're like getting crushed, and they show up.
They show
and
up.
They just like
go.
I told you about that guy when I first started training. This kid was a white belt, and then he started pulling off flying arm bars and shit.
Yeah.
He had like 3 of them at one tournament.
Yeah.
And he'd never done it. Maybe he did it once or practiced every now and again, but he never hit him. Yeah. And he like hit him. I'm like, what the fuck?
So that guy has to learn how to tap into that in the gym.
Yeah.
Right. So you know, it's everybody's got their challenge.
It's crazy.
Everyone's challenge is different. You know what I mean? So it's like everybody's got different facets of who they are, whether it be their actual muscular system or their neurological stuff. I mean, everybody's got their thing. It's all connected, but it's your being. It's who you are. You got to figure it all out. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to figure out which one you need more of. Maybe, you know, because some people are physically gifted and they're just.
And most people know. Most people deep down, they sort of have glimpses of what they need to work on, but it's hard. Right? It's like when, let's say your guard sucks, right? And you know you need to work it, but you never want to play there because you don't want to lose, right? You know you need to go there. Or sometimes you know that, like, you know, when you go to tournaments, you give up. So what do? Like, I don't really want to compete because, and you make excuses because it's easier to avoid the situation than just go head into it. And again, I mean, that's the whole point. You're supposed to go in there and do the damn thing and challenge yourself. So this way you're better at dealing with challenges no matter what, you know, so.
Yeah, it's hard though to look at yourself after you had a really shitty, you know, turnout or tournament. It's hard. But
that's ego. You know, it's ego. And again, everybody's like their place of growth. It's there right in front of them. All you got to do is listen, right? The body's like, hey, like giving you something. Like I was talking to the guy, my student, right, Josh, and him and I were talking, and we were talking about that situation where, he said he gave up in the match. And I asked him, I said, do you do that in the gym sometimes? He's like, yeah, sometimes I give up when I'm in certain situations. I'm like, there's your place for growth. That's where you're going to get stronger. That's where you're going to get more powerful. Like, let's think about waiting for that guy. Like, let's put the guards at the gate, put them ready, right? And then as soon as you feel that guy coming up to enter, he's trying to get in your head and create the thoughts, send him on his way. You're not allowed to be here, right? Because you got to be ready for it. And again, that's a skill because that's going to pop up all through. That's on and off the mat, right? All the time. That could manifest in some situation where all of a sudden you're getting ready to blow up on your significant other because of something that happened at work, and you got to be like, oh, snaps. I don't need to do this because this is not even coming from her. Or in a situation where, you're getting ready to get into a fight situation and you're nervous and you just got to make something happen. It can happen all over the place. So what was the book that you were talking about? You told me about a book.
I started reading, it's called Mindset, actually. I wrote it down. It's by Carol S. Dweck.
I've never read that.
So I took a few notes on it. So basically, I'm just really early into the book, and it talks about having a fixed mindset.
1 second.
Did we lose our... Oh, we froze. It's probably your...
Battery.
Yeah.
20%, we're good.
All right. So this book, it's called Mindset. It's basically about having a fixed mindset versus having a growth mindset. And so which one is correct? Which one's better? So the fixed mindset is basically this is what I have. This is what I was born with. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do.
Okay.
So maybe I'm not going to be this person, so I'm going to choose something else. Like I'm not going to be a college professor. I'm going to go be a janitor, for example. This is just my path.
Right.
And the growth mindset is kind of like, okay, so I did bad on this test. You have to say, okay, did I study incorrectly? What do I need to do to improve? Do I need to go talk to the professor? Do I need to ask them, review my exam? What do I need to do? And as far as somebody with that fixed mindset, if they had the same exact score on the exam, would say, well, I'm just stupid.
Right.
Or I'm just not good at this. So it's about changing your mindset and having that growth, the benefits of having that growth mindset of just trying to look at a situation and figuring it out and knowing that, for example, I talked about IQ.
Okay.
IQ is you're not born you may have a certain IQ,
sure,
but you can always improve that IQ. You
sure.
can be smarter. You can practice something. Now, there's always, in my opinion, we talked about this off the podcast, off the air, when Chewy, you're 6'1", you're probably not going to be a basketball player. No. You're just not.
My arms are too short.
You're too short.
Well,
your
it's not
skill level is probably not the best at that.
It's surprisingly enough, they found that the correlates are not just height; it's arm length and ratio to height. So if you got really long arms for your height and your vertical jump, so you could basically, they found players that were good at basketball that were all sorts of different heights, but as long as they had really long ass arms and they had a good vertical, they could play basketball.
So with the fixed mindset, you may say, well, I'm just not good at sports. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
But you may say, well, I'm going to find something that fits my body type, or I'm better at, or I can do at a higher level.
But see, the issue is this, because we were talking about this again before on air. When you run into a situation and let's say you experience some, if I tried to play basketball and I was rejected, you aren't good at basketball, so this isn't your sport. You could take that rejection and you could then just sort of blanket everything else with that rejection, right? You could let that sort of negative feeling, basically cloud everything else.
Yes.
Or, you could, and this is where being faithful in yourself, having faith in yourself to just make things happen, having courage, right, in yourself and just doing the thing. Then you could say, you know what, I'm gonna take this on, and I'm gonna go this way and see what other possibilities exist. And it takes fierceness and courage to see what possibilities exist for you, not just the negative possibilities, but the good ones. Because just like you're saying, the growth mindset. When you step out on the threshold of a transitional sort of space, right? When you don't know what we're so for instance, let's say that you come to jiu-jitsu for the first time, where this is a jiu-jitsu podcast, but you could replace this with your first time at this particular job, a new sport, a relationship, anything. When you step into a transitional space and you don't really have a good footing for who you are in that space yet, right? So your ego doesn't really know, where do I stand? in that situation, it can go negative or positive, but it takes courage to get out there into that space. It's like a threshold, and you got to be ready to just go, right?
Right.
A lot of people, when they get to the threshold and they see right in front of them, there's the moment of like truth. You want to step forward into past the threshold, or do you want to stay back here, right? If you step into the threshold, maybe it goes really well, maybe it doesn't, but you don't know unless you have the courage to step forward, right? And I think that's where people a lot of times have the hang up. They have this call to do something, right? Like a lot of people will send me messages to say, man, I really want to train. It seems really cool, but insert excuse. Dude, you're upon the threshold. Joseph Campbell would say you have the call to adventure, and then you've refused the call. This is always the pattern, right? We have the call to do something, and then we.
Is this a movie thing we're talking about again?
Well, it's a movie thing, but it's all mythology. And if you think about your own life, right? Has there ever been a situation where you felt like you were called to do something, or maybe you really wanted to do something, and initially you said, no, I'm not good enough, or I'm not ready for this, or whatever. You refused it, and then for something came back around and pulled you right in. You ended up doing it. Has that ever happened to you before?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
like I have all sorts of experiences like that where I refused it and then it pulled me in anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what he would say. And so, you have to be fierce. You have to be courageous, and you have to have faith in yourself to see what's possible, right? To see what you really have in you. And again, going back into jiu-jitsu as a means to discover that, right? Whether it be competitions or otherwise, it helps you figure out, man, like there's more in me than I thought there was. I put a little faith in myself, jumped into the situation, and then, wow, like this is who I am. I figured out that there was more than I thought there was.
Yeah. I think you have to be willing to fail.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the thing. Like if you're not willing to fail, then you're not going to take any chances or any risk. You have to be willing to fail in order to get that reward or get that, to do that.
Yeah.
That task that you see, because sometimes it's going to look like it's impossible. Like like you were talking about, 130,000 people are going to subscribe to your channel and listen to what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think, well, I may put some videos out there and nobody's going to give a shit about what I say.
Sure.
And they may make fun of me or say, you don't know what you're talking about, but I'm going to put it out there, and hopefully it resonates with some people, and it gives me some kind of, helps me give back and start some people's jiu-jitsu,
Sure.
Training, whatever it is.
Yeah, move from the place of move from a genuine, authentic place.
But yeah, and you could sit there and be like, God, I really have so much good information to share, but I'm scared to do it because what are people going to think about me?
Well, dude, even like when I started doing this stuff full time back in 2010, God, that was terrifying.
Yeah.
And it was like, I had a refusal there. I started to do it, and then I was like, I'm going to quit my job and do this stuff full time. And then I sort of reeled back and said, you know what? I'll work this third shift job, and then I'll do. It didn't work out. I had to just go all in.
Yeah.
But the thing is I had an intention. I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but there's no way that I could picture what it looks like now.
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't do it. Going back to mental, I couldn't visualize what it was. They say visualize what you want it to look like, right? I couldn't visualize it. I couldn't imagine growing up as a poor kid who didn't have shit, and like I'm in this situation, making no money. Like it's like I couldn't visualize what this thing looks like, and now I do. And I'm like, man, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This exceeded anything that I could have visualized. If I would have visualized it, it would have been too small. Right, I would have been like, no, like whatever. Like, there's no way.
It's not possible.
Yeah, there's not possible to have 400 students. It's not possible to have something where I can put my face out there and people actually give a shit. There's no way that's gonna happen.
And listen
right?
to you and stuff.
But you just move in the direction that you're being called to go. And by the way, guys, like a lot of you guys probably watch this. Especially, I get this from gym owners sometimes. Like the gym owners will send me questions and they'll say, "Hey, man, like you got it all figured out." Like I was like, "Hold on a second." I was like, "I'm still learning too. I've got a lot of stuff figured out. I'm a lot further ahead, right?" But we made so many mistakes, bro. Oh my God, made so many mistakes. I made more mistakes than I did successes.
Yeah.
I just like, as soon as a mistake happens, I'm like, all right, next, move on, right? You don't get too attached with them. It's like a roll. You get submitted and you're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's roll again.
You get better at that. Failures, you get better. I don't know. Do you think if you sustain a failure, you get better at failing, but you learn from it more?
If you listen. Like, so basically it's like this. I was telling one of the white belts today, I was telling him, I was like, when you're rolling, if someone stops one of your techniques, there's an opportunity there to do something else. You got to find it. So like some people they got their one technique and then they try to use it. It doesn't work. And then they go, shit, it doesn't work. And they get frustrated.
Yeah.
Or you could say, well, how did they stop it? what else could I do? Like, you know, and that's where you kind of have that, what else could we do here, right? You start thinking. So if you have a failure, it's like, okay, well, what went wrong? What could you do better? Like, learn from it, listen to it, right? You know, it's the difference between like, if you, like, for instance, my early days, I couldn't watch my matches when I lost. I couldn't watch them. I'd watch my wins, and then when I got to my loss, I'd be like, no, I'm not watching that. I couldn't learn from them.
Yeah.
I made the same mistakes over and over and over again in tournaments. I would have like these like gaping, glaring holes in my game that I never wanted to touch because I'm like, ooh, they make me feel bad. But then when I stopped doing that dumb stuff and then started working on them, magically everything got a little bit better. So your failures are fine as long as you listen to what they tell you. You know, they're telling you something. But you got to be, you have to have an ear to it and listen to it.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to be willing to.
That's a great point. All right. Let's do it. Q&A time.
Q&A. All right,
Q&A.
guys. So you guys have been listening to us talk for a little bit. So let's throw some questions out. We'll go through and look at what you guys put up at the top, but we'll go through some questions.
All right.
And thank you guys for joining us on this beautiful afternoon.
Cold afternoon, but probably colder elsewhere, as Chewy said.
Yeah, they said it's like what different parts, like in the Antarctic, it's colder.
All right. Man, people are hating.
People hating.
Somebody said, "Do you have freshly baked bricks for Chewy to snack on?"
Oh, they're hating on my teeth.
Ah, damn. Vinny Prince.
Hating on my teeth.
Prince. You're kind of a jerk.
I don't care. You know, the funny thing is like, you know, it's funny. It's like, you know, when that stuff happens, it's like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's become more of a joke now.
Yeah.
Because like everybody jokes about it now. Because here's a great example. Okay. If any of you guys out there have a situation where someone's making fun of you about something, you have more choices, but there's two choices most commonly. You can either let people make fun of you and let it bother you, or you can own that shit. So like I made the video, I was like, make fun of my tooth. Like because people would talk about it all the time. They're like, because I'm sitting there talking in the camera. They're like, oh man, he looks like, my favorite one was he looks like Captain America with jacked teeth. Like
that's not bad.
That's not bad, right? Just
Captain America's kind of.
He's like Captain America with messed up teeth, and you know, then I was like, make fun of me, and you guys, they were hilarious. But you know, that's the thing. I owned that, right? Instead of just letting someone get me.
Some of these comments, dude, are stupid. They said, "Is masturbation mental or physical?" Both,
man. Both. Here's a great example.
Is the person.
Here's a great example about masturbation is physical. Okay, no, check us out. So,
oh man, do we want to get into this?
Sure, why not?
Right.
So you guys asked, so we'll talk about it. So like you get some people like where it's like don't masturbate, and they can't help themselves.
Oh my
God.
God.
But you can't tell yourself not to do it. You know, it's funny. Like so, it's like it's a physical and mental thing, right? It's the whole thing.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah. What is my theory behind open guard? What do you mean, John Family? How do you mean theory behind open guard? I don't know what that means.
I guess not close guard.
Is there a such this comes from B Sanchez? Is there a such thing as brown nosing students so they can further advance in progression?
Probably.
I mean, I'm sure some people do. But
Somebody wants to get you on Joe Rogan. That'd be awesome.
I don't know what I would talk about with Joe Rogan. Like, you know, people say, I'm like, you know, like what do we do? Oh my God, Chewy talking about masturbation. I'll never get an erection again. That's funny.
All right, so here's a good one from Dylan Laughran.
Later, Diablo. What's that?
Hey Chewy, there's a seminar at my gym on Saturday, but I have a cold. Should I go?
Depends on how much of a cold you have. If you really want to go to the seminar and you're not like super snotty and stuff like that, you should be fine. But if you're like hacking and coughing and snotty, just don't do it.
Don't get anybody sick.
Yeah, you don't want to get anybody sick.
So you don't want to show up with staph.
But if you've just got like a little bit of like a cough or something, you should be fine. I mean, you know, that's what I would say anyway.
All right, Chewy. So here's James Johnson asks, any advice about how to roll with a T-Rex? Now what he means is a guy in my gym is 5 foot, super strong, short arms, no neck. Nothing I do works on this cat.
You can find a way. I'll give you an example. Here's a great, and this is where, again, when you have the mindset of it's not going to work, your shit ain't going to work. Simple as that, right? When you approach it with that sort of that mindset, right? There was a situation, again, fixed versus growth, right? Fixed mindset, he's got short arms, no neck, I can't get him. Growth mindset, I'm going to find a way to choke this guy. I'm going to find a way to armbar him.
Yep.
There was a situation in our gym years ago. This is like 2007. I was a purple belt. and there was this really, really big guy, right? Big old juiced up guy that used to train with us, MMA fighter. He was rolling with all the smaller guys, and he was just like pounding them and hurting them. And he wasn't being cool at all. And the coach at the time on the mat was Tommy, and Tommy came up to me. Tommy's about 150 pounds. Tommy was like, you know, this guy's like 250. You know, Tommy comes up to me, he's like, Chewy, will you go do something with him? Like, because he's like, you know, he's just gonna like go crazy on me, right? And I remember we slapped hands, and I remember he goes, and I never could choke him. Okay, like I just couldn't choke him for some reason. And I remember he told me, we're getting ready to roll. He's like, he said something to the effect of like, you ain't choking me, so it's like, and you're not getting these arms, whatever. So I remember him saying, you're not gonna choke me. I was like, I remember having the mindset of like, I'm gonna choke you. I'm gonna find a way to choke you. I took that guy's back, and I somehow just like, I was so dead set on getting a choke. Guess what happened? I started choking him. I choked him out 6 times in a 5-minute round.
Oh, shit.
Because I started to find a way around it where his big old neck, but I found that if I made my hand flat like this, that I could slide it up under his chin, and he didn't know what to do because his positional game was so bad he couldn't escape. So I was like, I have plenty of time to work. Let's find a way to get under the neck. So there's rarely going to be a situation that's always going to be a catch-all. But when you have a situation where when someone gives you a tough time based on their attributes or skills or whatever it might be, you have to approach the situation with, nah, man, I can't do it, to, listen, he's giving me this challenging situation, but I'm going to figure him out. It might take me a little bit, might take you a month, might take you a couple months, but I'm going to figure him out. And you have to approach it with that mindset. Maybe that's mental.
I don't know. Maybe, man. I always say it's a beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is there's always a way. There's always a way around.
You just got to find it.
Yeah.
And that's the joy of it, right? It's like anything else. It's like the joy is discovering, carving your own path.
All right. Here's a question, and I think this is from the point of like physical rehabilitation. Can BJJ be used as rehabilitation, or should I start with like yoga or something?
It depends on what you're rehabilitating from.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. If you're dealing with injuries, then yeah, and yoga is a great supplement to BJJ for sure. But like if you don't have any injuries, you're just out of shape or weak or deconditioned, I think jiu-jitsu is a great place to start. I think you want to supplement with other things, obviously, but why not? Why, you know, you got people that are out of it's like people asking, I'm fat, I can't do jiu-jitsu. I'm going to wait till I get in better shape to do jiu-jitsu. No, do it because you're fat and get in better shape doing it. Can you imagine how much better you'll be if you start fat and out of shape doing jiu-jitsu and then you get in better shape? Yeah. And like your body starts to figure out the mechanics of jiu-jitsu.
Well, and the reality is that you can have someone that's in shape that can, you know, like be good at exercising in other areas, but then they go to jiu-jitsu and they putter out just the same because it's all new to them.
Let's see if we can find any more questions. I don't know.
Let's see here. So this one comes from Trent. He says, I'm a white belt. I'm focusing on my escapes, and I'm letting myself be put in bad positions during rolls to figure out ways to escape. Is that a good thing to do? You guys are the best. Trent, absolutely. One of the cool things, and I would challenge you to do this. This is hard to do, but challenge yourself to do this. The next time you go in the gym, when you let someone put you in a bad spot, don't even worry about escaping. What I would challenge you to, and I'll tell you where this came from. Let's say it's side control. Get your arms in really tight, protect your neck, and just see how long you can stop them from submitting you. Just see how long it takes. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is I remember, like with the white belt classes, every now and then when we do our escape-focused weeks, one of the first situational drills I'll do is I'll put them in the situation that we started from. Let's say it's mount, side control, back mount, whatever it might be, and I tell them, okay, if you're in the bad spot, if you're in the bottom position, don't even worry about escaping. All I want you to do is just keep yourself tight. Don't get submitted. Just see what happens. And it's amazing because almost nobody gets submitted during that round. Because what you find is that when you keep everything in really tight, it's really, really difficult to submit you. But then when you start to move and the movement creates openings, that's where the submissions happen. So what you can do is if you realize that, oh, I can fend off a submission for a pretty long time, that gives you time to think about setting up the frames and the position much better. So this way, when you actually go for the escape, you're more likely to get it, opposed to just like starting to spaz out and go crazy and just, you know, do things that are really bad. So really focus on just being able to just hang out in those positions and be comfortable, just being like, oh, you're not going to submit me, and then move when it's time. So
one's asking about 57 years old and just started jiu-jitsu and boxing. How can I get more aggressive? mindset and sparring for both. I'm afraid my partner will not want to work with me if I go too hard
How old?
accidentally. 57.
57, man.
Good for you, man.
57, that's awesome, brother.
Jerry Heath.
Jerry Heath. So, Jerry, I would say just do your thing, brother. Like, don't worry about being aggressive, right? Like, you know, you're an older guy and you've probably done some stuff. I mean, like you've had a lot of life experience, you know, like a lot of young guys, they're super aggressive because they're out there trying to prove themselves, right? They're warriors trying to be like, I'm asserting myself into a situation. You're more the older guy where you're like trying to pick this up and learn it. And I mean, if someone can't roll with you being 57 and just be cool and moving around, then something's wrong in my opinion, right? Because I've rolled with, like if I had a 57-year-old guy like try to go balls crazy like a 20-year-old, I would tell him, hey bro, you need to chill because you're not 20 years old and your body's not going to recover from this and you're going to hurt yourself.
You're going to hurt your hips, sir.
Exactly. Dude, absolutely, man. You're going to hurt something. So take your time and just enjoy it, man. Don't worry about it. And honestly, you know, I see this over and over again. People a lot of times, because they're in their own head, if they become self-conscious of something, they think other people know about it too, right? Like it's like, for instance, like someone will have like a friggin' zit or something and they're like, God, I wonder if he's staring at my zit right now, you know? And then the person's not, they don't give a shit about you, right? And so sometimes this has happened where I've had one of my own students where, again, similar situation, he's an older guy and you know, this is several years ago and he didn't want to like go super intense, we're rolling, and he kept apologizing that he was going so slow. I'm like, dude, you don't have to apologize. I'm cool with this. Everybody's cool with it. It's fine. No one's upset that they have to roll with you, right? And nobody cares. And like afterwards, I kind of like mentioned it, and everybody was like, "Yeah, it's cool, man, whatever." So a lot of times we become self-conscious of situations, and really they're not even a problem for anyone else. And I think that's probably more the case because a lot of times we understand that people of different ages and body types and everything else, they're going to roll at different speeds.
Are we dead again? Almost.
Almost. We're good.
All right. We'll do a few more.
A few more, then we'll be good.
So this is a good one. This is a white belt question from Joey Lewis 19. Started BJJ 3 weeks ago, 29 years old, trying to get my mental mindset focused for learning and remembering more in training. There's so much to remember. Any tips? So any tips on remembering techniques or...
Stop trying to remember.
Okay.
I mean, it is what it is. Like, see, that this is where a problem becomes because people are like, we've been trained. Like, let me talk about this. So, all right, when you learn how to speak, what was his name again? Joey Lewis?
So. Yeah.
Joey Lewis, 19. Joey Lewis, 19. When you were learning to speak as a baby, right? Like when you were, obviously you don't remember this, but I'm sure your parents didn't take you into a room and teach you words and then say, now remember these words. You need to remember these particular words because these are going to be on a test or these are going to be things you're going to need to remember, right? What happened? You started just going, blah, blah, goo, goo, gaga, mama, right? Like you started saying stuff, right? Or when you're a baby, like when you're a young kid and you start figuring things out, nobody sits you in front of a class and goes, okay, well, here's what we're going to do and you're going to be tested this. That doesn't happen until we go to school. And we get this artificial way of learning. And we get a hang up on this friggin' hard on for remembering stuff. Gotta remember, gotta memorize it, right? Go through jiu-jitsu more of like a child who's exploring a situation. Instead of like feeling like you gotta be hampered to like learn and remember names and stuff like that. It just happens. Just like a baby learning how to say things and it just sees things and it's exploring its surroundings and it just figures the shit out. It's the same thing. I'm not saying that you can't like watch a video, you can't take notes. Those things can be incredibly helpful. But we get too hung up on like trying to remember everything. You're not going to remember it. It's so much coming in and you're drinking through a fire hose. Like there's so much coming in. There's no way you're possibly going to remember everything. It comes back around. Like there's times where like I was talking to one of my blue belts yesterday about this. You'll learn a technique. He was basically what he was doing. He was watching a video. And it was a video of a technique that he had recorded 2 years ago. And he said, man, it was so cool watching it again because I'm in a different place now. And I saw all these little details that weren't there before, right? He missed all this stuff, right? Doesn't even remember half of it. Now he remembers it again, right? So you keep going through the training and you'll forget all this stuff. And then you come back to it and you're like, oh, yeah, that one. And you remember it again. But the thing is don't get hung up on remembering because that's a big hang up for people. Like I didn't have that because like I'm just kind of those person that just jumps into things. Like as a kid, like I would have friends that would read the instruction manuals to video games. I didn't. I would just like start playing. I'd figure the controls out, right? And they would have to read and get all the stuff down before they ever played. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to play, right? I want to play a game. And I think that, they both have advantages, but I think that a lot of times people who get too hung up on having to know all the names and everything else, it just gets in the way. Just get out of your own way. Just play. Just play.
Right.
It's a game. You're literally, when you're rolling, you're playing a game. Play, be in the gym, discover the situations that you're going to get into, experiment with it. Like I said, take notes, watch videos. Those can be really helpful. I think watching videos and different things like that. But just let it assimilate at a natural pace, right? Let it just kind of absorb in. It's going to happen naturally. You may feel like, I don't want to know it now. I get it. And that's that idea that we want to get better faster and all this stuff. But just let it happen rather than feeling this rush, this need to have to take it in,
Well, especially, I think you said 3 weeks in. Is that correct?
You're brand new.
Like, dude, you not going to remember anything. And for me, at that stage, it was just like being on the mat.
Just show up.
Show up.
You're still trying to create a habit.
Like, I learned maybe one pass or one sweep, something like that. So I would just drill. So if anything can help, anything tangible, I'd say just find one technique and just drill it over and over the best you can.
Yeah.
That's really the repetition, muscle memory. Because when we're rolling most of the time, you're not really thinking about stuff. I mean, sometimes maybe you get to a stopping place, you're like, all right, I need to assess the position. But usually you're just moving, and you know where you're going to be. You already know as soon as I get my knee through, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to move that way, or I'm going to grab this grip, or get this underhook. So, and you're not thinking about it. You're just fucking do it.
The body's happening.
Yeah.
The movements are happening. The programming that you put in place is just
muscle memory.
Yeah. Exactly.
See? Muscle memory. That's a physical thing and a mental thing. Crazy, man.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a big thing, So for all you white belts out there that are watching, just be willing to explore and be willing to discover the position without the hang up of that we've been put through with schools and things like that, where we feel like we have to memorize things and stuff like that, because that's all just silliness.
Yeah,
it's just a different. It's an artificial way of learning. That's not the way we normally learn as people.
And not everybody learns the same way. Some people have to read, like you said. Some people have to just do.
Well, see, there are some people that are logically minded, and they need the step by step stuff. They need it. It's the way that their mind works. I'm not that person. I'm more of a sort of more abstract, where I kind of like just getting my hands in it, getting dirty, right? But there are people that need those step by step sort of things, and that's where you can take notes and you can put together videos for yourself to watch, all that stuff, and remember that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
but 3 weeks in, man, you're new. So
dude, just be there, enjoy playing around with stuff.
Joey, you're welcome, brother. Thank you for the question.
5 million videos on rolling bigger guys. Let's see. All right, here we go. Great one.
In a world, it's a great question.
Bernard Tomic.
Hey,
Chewy, what's the best way to stop an opponent from standing up when they are in your guard?
When they're in their guard, stop. You got to break posture. So if you're inside, if someone's inside your full guard, okay, always consider this. So in judo, when you're on the feet, they place a big emphasis on kazushi, off balancing, knocking the person out of their position, uprooting them from the position. In jiu-jitsu, it's almost an afterthought, right? We don't really think about it. But if you're in the bottom position of guard, then you have to be thinking about messing up the person's top position, their position where they are, and you have to knock it off balance. And you do this when you're inside the guard by breaking posture.
Yeah.
So your focus inside the guard should never be sweeps and submissions first. It should be control of the position and posture, right? Again, when you're when you're in the bottom and you have your legs locked around someone, get rid of him.
What?
I got to remove this guy. Hold on 1 second.
All right. What are you looking at?
Put him in timeout. So it was some guy. He posted some message. Anyway, when you're inside the full guard, you're in an offensive position, right? So you want to try to do your best to break the posture and start to work aggressively for the offense, because you're in the offensive spot. So if you do that, they won't be able to stand.
Yeah, because you get you're manipulating their body weight,
right?
And so try standing up with your head
Yeah.
way in front of your feet.
Can't
you
do
can't.
it.
You're gonna fall over. So
now, if they do stand up, then you either need to have like maybe a lumberjack sweep. That's a really easy one for white belts in the beginning, or start to open your guard and work for other types of movements. You know, other types of guards like daily hiva and basic open guards.
Transition, yeah, you can transition X guards and things like that.
Yeah.
All right.
One more.
One more. All
One
right.
more.
One more.
Let's pick one more, and then we'll rock this thing out.
And then next week we're gonna have a podcast. We'll go into that in a minute. So
Yeah, so I'll tell you guys some stuff coming up. The location of my gym is in Louisville, Kentucky. So just to kind of give you guys a heads up on some of the upcoming episodes, we're doing a podcast episode with Charlotte's Web.
yeah, we're doing a guy from Charlotte's Web's coming in. He's gonna be in studio with us. We're gonna do a podcast with him. He's gonna talk about basically the benefits of CBD. You and I have been using it some. We've had some good benefits. We kind of just touched on those, but we're gonna get into some deep down dive into some really the reasons why we use it, the reasons why CBD is kind of a big thing now for recovery,
Yep.
and how important, I've it's been really important for me as far as a recovery tool besides stretching and diet and things like that. It's just something else that I can add. And so we have partnered with Charlotte's Web. So if you go to cwhemp.com and use the promo code Chewjitsu10, you'll get 10% off of your total purchase of CBD, and you also support the podcast, which helps out. And they're a good brand. Just you can look up all the statistics on them. So they're really good quality stuff. So
And I've enjoyed it. Like I said, I've been doing it for 6 months, and I've got a lot of questions like which one they were using and stuff like that. And I just really wanted to take my time with it because I've gone off on it. I've gone on and off
tried
of
different
it.
stuff too,
I've tried different. I've tried literally 7 or 8 different CBD oils. Over that time period, I've done different balms, all this stuff, because I really wanted to make sure that if we shared it or something like that, that it would be.
But
useful.
this will be a great. We're gonna hit a bunch of stuff, how it's pertinent to jiu-jitsu and just anything.
Well, and also
everything.
talk about like what the hell is it? Because a lot of people like they know it's supposed to be
what
cool,
is it,
but
how
like,
it
what
works,
does it actually do?
and what you should expect to feel, and how long it should take you to feel benefits and things like that. So
yeah, and then after that, I'm going to be
I think
doing.
you're dead. Your battery's dead, possibly.
And then after that, we're going to be doing a cool podcast with a friend of mine, Ethan. Ethan he's big into jiu-jitsu. He's a brown belt. He's also done strength conditioning work. He's done stuff with bodybuilding, all this different stuff. And we're going to do a whole podcast on like nutrition, dieting, and all that kind of
Strength
stuff.
conditioning.
Strength conditioning. We're going to focus mostly on the diet for this one. For jiu-jitsu, because a lot of guys have a lot of misconceptions about dieting, and he really wants to dive in. We're going to dive into like the science about like what's happening when we eat.
Yeah.
Like how can we understand our relationship with food and what it's going to do for us,
Right.
so that it can help us reach those goals that we have for.
Maybe even cutting weight, prepping for a tournament and all that stuff.
So it should be good. So I think that's it, guys.
That's it. Also, we have extras on patreon.com/jiu-jitsu podcast.
Yeah,
so if you guys,
so if you guys want, like we record extra Chewy rambles and some extra episodes. So whenever we have a guest, we record little extra bits with them. So if you guys want to check those out, you can check those out on the Patreon. It's like for a few bucks or